right, good afternoon and welcome back to the Patriotic Dragon Radio. We want to thank Rocco's Pub and Grill for hosting us again this month. Patriotic Dragon Radio is heard on WYYZ 1490 AM, our hometown radio here in Jasper, Georgia. As always, the opinions, comments are those of the guest and not necessarily those of WYYZ, Patriotic Dragon Radio, Pickens GOP, or our sponsor. Our sponsor this month is Clear Car Concepts, providing clear protection for your vehicle from the road debris and the wear and tear of the Atlanta roads. Find them at your Atlanta area new car dealers or at clearcarconcepts.com. We're pleased to have with us this week. Let me do it right. Get to the front page here. We're pleased to have on with us this week, after a very interesting legislative session, Steve Gooch, State Senator from 51st District, and Charlie Bethel, State Senator from our 54th District. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being on with us.
We appreciate you having us.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right, great. Well, I want to kind of ask both of you some questions, and I'll put it to whichever one. I think you're the oldest. No, I'm kidding.
How can you tell? The gray hair?
Because you look like my hair.
It's a good thing we're on radio, right?
That's right. That's it. So, Steve, just if you'd like to start out with what you feel were the highlights of the session.
Sure. In an election year session, we always try to get in and get out as quick as we can. And so this year we were out fairly quickly. March 24th was our last day. We call it sine die. And so we all left, went home. Charlie and I probably didn't take a day off like a lot of our members did because we have primary opposition, so we went straight to work in our districts. Plus, we have day jobs. This is a part-time job. We're a part-time legislature. We make $17,000 a year, so you don't have time to go on vacations and do a whole lot of stuff. If you've got a business to take care of, you got to go take care of that. But as always, our first and our main priority in the General Assembly is our budget. So we adopted our budget this year, and it was a good year. I think the economy continues to grow and rebound from our great recession that we had a few years ago. We're seeing record numbers of jobs coming back to Georgia. We're still the number one state in the country to do business, and we've earned that honor for the last 3 years. And so we're seeing a lot of good economic development here in North Georgia, and I think the income tax revenues are coming in stronger than ever. And so we were able to do some really good things in our budget this year. First, we were able to restore some more cuts that were made to the education department years ago. We gave teachers a 3% pay raise. We gave some of our public safety employees raises as well, in addition to the 3% we gave to all state employees. So we were excited to be able to do that. We want to continue to invest in education. That's our number one priority in the Senate. So, there's just lots of things that we could talk about as far as the priorities in the budget, but overall, education was our number one issue this year. And the budget's about $23.5 billion now, and it's growing about 4 to 5% per year. And, of course, some of that revenue this year we saw coming in was for the reform measures that we took last year with House Bill 170, reforming our Transportation Investment Act. And so we're proud of some of the work we've done there and what we're getting ready to do in transportation all over the state, and especially here in our home districts.
And, Charlie, how about you? What was your highlight, I guess, of the session that you feel?
Well, I would echo the things that Steve said. I think that the only thing the state constitution asks us to do is pass a balanced budget. So we always have to start and talk about the budget and what we've done from that standpoint. And we continue to have a balanced budget, which is a credit to our state, not just our legislature, but to the state of Georgia for having that discipline. I always feel like highlights are in the eye of the beholder. So it depends upon what issues that you're passionate about. So if you're a Second Amendment advocate, things like campus carry and some of the reforms around that were passed may look like a highlight to you. If you're a domestic violence advocate, a bill I carried, Senate Bill 193, which closes some loopholes related to repeat offenders, might be a highlight to you. But that really sort of rings true across the entire session, because every bill that comes to the floor is important to somebody, and that may be the one bill that they're most excited about passing each year. I do think that when you look at what we've done from a fiscal discipline standpoint, you have to feel good about where we're positioned. We're still a AAA rated state from a bond standpoint, and there's less and less of those each passing year. And so that's good for us today, but it's also a gift to our children, being able to be responsible for our finances in that respect.
All right. Well, and speaking to that, I know there was a lot of wrangling back and forth, and some people were not happy with the bill as far last year, as far as the transportation bill. And I understand there were going to be some adjustments to the taxes, to the hotel industry, rental cars, that type of thing. Where did we finally come down on that when the session closed? Were there any changes to that part of it?
Well, the Senate passed several measures, and not just this year, but the last 6 years. Charlie and I both were elected in 2010, so we took office in 2011. But in the 6 years that the two of us have been there, we didn't single-handedly do this, obviously, but we work as a team. We've repealed the estate tax in Georgia. We've gotten rid of the marriage penalty in Georgia. We've eliminated income tax for seniors up to $130,000 a year. Now, that's pretty big if you think about what that will do for senior citizens that are living in North Georgia. They no longer have to pay a Georgia state income tax up to the $130,000 a year in their household income. So that's pretty major. We've also capped the income tax through a constitutional amendment. 2 years ago we passed that, and it went on the ballot, and the citizens of Georgia, rightfully so, agreed to that. So income tax can never go above 6% in Georgia. So if the Republicans lose control in the next few years and the Democrats take over and they want to try to raise taxes, they won't be able to do so because of the leadership of Governor Deal and the House and the Senate. So we've done a lot of tax reform there. This year in the Senate, we passed a constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, it didn't make it out of the House, but it would lower the income tax in Georgia. It's a promise that we made in House Bill 170 last year to do some tax reform to lower the income tax and lower the tax burden on Georgians. And it also helped us to roll money out of the budget into transportation so we can invest in our infrastructure. And so you're going to see some really good projects because of what we did last year in the infrastructure area and transportation. So, and I'm prepared to talk about some of those here in just a little bit, but I'll let Charlie talk for a little bit about some of the other things that we've done.
Well, I think Steve really did a great job of hitting sort of the highlights of what we've done, both as a General Assembly, but also the Senate side and the Senate position as it relates to trying to lower the tax burden. Circling back to your original question, I think many of us are very dissatisfied with particular elements of House Bill 170, and we did not give any relief as it relates to the hotel motel tax this year, something that I'd hoped we would be able to do. Certainly, in and of itself, it's sort of an onerous tax. It doesn't really relate to transportation in an immediate or direct way. And then the sort of last straw, as it were, is that it's regressive. So if it's a flat fee, a $5 fee per night on a high-end hotel room, that's less of a percentage of your cost as it is somebody who's doing from a budget standpoint. You're working on a budget and staying there. Many of us were sorry to see it there and would like to see some changes made. We're going to keep advocating for that. As Steve indicated, we work within our own caucus, we work within our own chamber, and then we also have to deal with the House and certainly the governor's office whenever we do these things. And so as much as we might like to imagine ourselves able to just snap our fingers and have our way be done, that's not the process that we have in government, and for good reason. I wouldn't want to be solely responsible for anything as big as the state of Georgia, and so that's the process. And I think the Senate has been very proactive in talking about tax reform on a large scale. One of the things that we've unfortunately seen across the country, but also in Georgia, is the incremental and nibbling, and we're going to tweak this area of tax policy and that area of tax policy. And the Senate has been consistently advocating for a comprehensive reform approach, and we have friends in the House that I think feel the same way. But I really think for the long-term future of the state and the economic health, that's a step that we need to pursue and really move forward on. And we continue to have those conversations with our friends.
All right. And I know what the feedback that I'd gotten from some listeners and some questions were as it pertained to what at the state level, at the governor's office, and that type of thing, we're offering to the Falcons, and we're offering to the Braves, and offering to get these championships in, and what we're willing to put our hands behind our back and for these big corporations. But at the same time, like you say, when we turn around and we have smaller businesses or companies come in to do work in the state, and they're staying at an extended stay hotel, they're paying the $5 a night when they were trying to get into a budget of $239 a week. Versus, I'm a Hilton Honors member and I'm a Diamond, but doesn't mean I want to pay the extra $5 either. But at that end of the spectrum, is far more worth it than businesses we're trying to encourage to come in and do work, and then we turn around and hit them with, another $35 to $40 a week. So, yeah, it's definitely, and like I say, with the pushback with people say, if we're going to do this, why are we giving the NFL what we're giving them? So. Yeah, something I hope that we see some action on.
Let me add to that. I don't think any one of us wanted that hotel motel fee in that bill. It came in the last days of that negotiation. The original Senate version of House Bill 170 that we added to the bill during our session was a fee for rental cars. So if you think about it, when you fly in or out of an airport and you rent a car. If you go to Enterprise or any of the other rental car companies, 80% of the time, that may be a number off by a few percent, but a large majority of the vehicles that are in that rental car lot have out-of-state tags. Those cars aren't registered in the state where you're renting those cars from.
Right.
So when you fly into Atlanta and you get a rental car, a lot of times those cars have Florida tags, they have Texas tags, Arizona.
Ohio.
They come from all over the country. Those cars aren't paying to use our roads in Georgia. And those tourists that are coming here, driving all over the state, we want them here. We want them spending money here. But we felt like that is a better way to help share the cost of maintaining our roads and our infrastructure, but also to put money back in to widen those roads and to help replace those bridges that are coming down around us. So we don't always get everything we want in life. We knew that as a kid, but that was one of the part of the bills that neither Charlie nor I liked very much, but you had to vote for the overall need of the state, and we're sent down there to solve problems. And we had a lot of discussion about that. I think going forward we can look at the data after we've had a year of collection, and we can reflect back on it and say that was a bad idea or a good idea, or here's a better way. And I think we can always adjust it. And next year I'm sure we'll have that discussion and that opportunity.
That's great. Okay. All right. What issues would you like to have addressed that didn't make it out of committee? I know there were
some of my bills.
a few of mine too. One, I think that the last time I was with you, I talked a little bit about a bill, Senate Bill 312, that I've carried that deals with the Hope Scholarship, and we made it out of the Senate, and I was proud to have Steve's support as well as the overwhelming majority of my colleagues there. We held up in committee in the House, and I want to say, a lot of times people get all really upset about the process. There are a lot of opinions and views about how the Hope Scholarship should be managed and how it should be handled going forward, and it's my inclination to be respectful of my colleagues in that respect. So I don't say it to say I'm angry at anybody. I'm just disappointed because I think I have a good solution or a good alternative for Georgia, but other people have opinions, and so we're called to work together to try and build an agreement around a good plan. And if somebody has a plan that's I think's better than mine, I'll dump mine and move to it. But Senate Bill 312 would essentially establish a floor for Hope Scholars. 6 years ago, when Steve and I were both elected, and when Governor Deal was elected, we were months away from insolvency in our Hope Scholarship funds. We were going to have more demand than we had dollars to pay, and so with Governor Deal's leadership, bipartisan leadership in the legislature, we established some pieces that changed the structure of Hope Scholarship from its original setting. The piece that I would like to talk about, and that's what Senate Bill 312 does, is saying that when in our access institutions and our state college systems, our more value-based education, so places where tuition is less than or equal to $2,000 per semester. So there's about 14 schools in the university system and all of our technical college schools where that would apply. say to those folks, it's going to be a 100% scholarship. The total cost of that is somewhere around $8 million. Of course, that number moves because of the number of students that come in and go out of the program every year. But the reserves, of course, Hope Scholarships, all lottery funds. This isn't coming out of your tax bill. So the reserves are back to a point after the changes we made 6 years ago where they would sustain that, and we would be saying to people who are first in their family to go to college. A lot of times, working parents, single parents find themselves in those schools, and we want to reward that. We want to encourage that. That's a passion of mine, making that access a reality. So it'll be something that I'll, assuming I'm fortunate enough to be reelected, it'll be something that I will be pushing again next year. And like I say, if somebody comes with a better solution to that problem, then I'll put mine aside and move on with theirs. But those are the sorts of things that happen every year. So disappointed, yes, but that's the nature of what we do.
All right. How about you, Steve?
Pretty similar to what Charlie was saying. The constitutional amendment that would have eliminated and repealed state property taxes on people's homes. We've eliminated property taxes from the state perspective, but that code section's still on the books. We want to strip that from the books, and we want to make sure that no one ever tries to put a property tax on homes again. So we passed that this year. It didn't get through the House, but we also passed a constitutional amendment to lower the income tax in Georgia, and that's one I think we need to go back to next year and work hard on and try to do that, because we're seeing good growth in our economy. Our revenues are coming in, our budgets are growing. We need to make sure we control spending and that we don't just spend money that's coming in, and I think that's one way to do it. If we'll start lowering that, ratcheting down that income tax and go to more of a flat tax or a fair tax, I think that's what people in North Georgia want us to do. But we've eliminated a lot of waste in government. We implemented zero-based budgeting a few years ago, and we've seen great results of that.
Absolutely.
I can give you one prime example, if you'll let me. In 2010, when Charlie and I were elected, there were 70,716 state employees on the payroll. This year, there's 58,262. So we've eliminated over 12 or 13,000 state positions that were full-time employees drawing a full-time pension once they reach retirement, and all the benefits and all that. So we've saved hundreds of millions of dollars just in the zero-based budgeting efforts that we've put forth and all the scrutiny that we've applied in the budgeting process down there. So we're a very conservative Senate, and I think the House is very conservative as well. The governor's done a great job of eliminating a lot of the waste, and so you never hear that on the news. You don't hear that in the Atlanta media, but you come back home and you try to talk about it and explain it to people, and people are proud of that. So they know we're in there watching every dollar, and we spend that money like it's our own. Because it is, we're paying taxes, our families are paying taxes, we're working hard, and so we want to make North Georgia the greatest place it can be and a place to live, work, and play. And so I'm proud of the job we've done, and I look forward to doing 2 more years if the people put us back in office.
All right. Well, and along that same line, which is something that's come up, and I don't have the exact percentages, but the increase in state employee allocations of their salaries. I know we've cut that 12 to 13,000 statewide employees at all different levels. I understand that. But what has been our increase, other than the 3%, which I think was well deserved, but we hear, especially in the education department, how teachers who've retired safe, and we've got that situation here where we had a school administrator who retired with a full retirement from a different county and is now working for this county and is actually the highest paid employee in the entire county. Where do we stand on that? Because that's what I keep hearing back from people is, we cut employees out of the state system, but yet we've had increases of starting salaries and those type things. What do you think the solution is? I mean, from my standpoint, the feedback I've got from people is that when an administrator or a teacher gets their 20 years or 25, when they retire, they should stay retired and not be back in the system, whether it's a different county or the same county they're from. And we see that. And it's not that we want to lose talented people, but there has to be a point where we bring new blood into the system as well. What's your thoughts on that, Steve? Or
we'll let Charlie start first.
Yeah, sure. I'll hop on that first. The first thing I would say is it's easy to say, well, this is what I think. But in Georgia, we do have local school boards, and they are responsible for hiring their staff. Those folks are not employees of the state. They do have access to state benefits, and so if we really want to get sort of into the depth of trying to sort of evaluate hiring policies and the state dictating those down to school boards, that may not be a satisfying discussion all the way to its conclusion. Having said that, I really think that the bigger issue is how we manage the benefits that are available, and this is what I mean by that. The problem I think most people have is not that someone has worked somewhere else and is now working here. It's the notion that you're what we call double dipping, that you're drawing a retirement or getting retirement and still employed, and so your income is dramatically inflated by that. There are a number of steps that other states do and that I would like to see Georgia explore around the notion of someone being retired and then gaining full-time employment, again, within the same benefits system. It's, when folks move from Tennessee or other states and do that, it becomes very difficult because we can't regulate somebody else's plan. Right. But with respect to our plans and our retirements, whether it's in education or otherwise, state employee, making it clear that retired means retired. Right. And that's when you draw benefits. And if you're employed and you're still working and you're under the normal retirement age, then you wouldn't be drawing benefits. And make sure that's a clear delineation so that somebody doesn't get essentially sort of two bites at the apple. I think that there are policies around that people understand. The other thing that we have to recognize is that Georgia, and you mentioned educators, it happens in some other professions, government professions in Georgia. We actually have, you sort of made allusion to it, fairly low starting salaries, but our average salaries, when you look at them, are really high in the Southeast and moderate at the national level, in terms of where we fall in a ranking standpoint. Well, that tells us if we have low starting, but we fall in the middle, that we have some sort of acceleration that happens somewhere through. In Georgia, that tends to happen based on the numbers that I've seen late in someone's career, and it's partly attributable to the way our retirement system works when it's based on the highest number, X number of months, and then so what happens is we accelerate the pay towards the end so that the retirement is more comfortable. Well, what that does, that sort of pay scale and that sort of pay structure, makes it very difficult to have competitive starting salaries, and what we're really looking for is, and nothing against administrators, there's a lot of fine people in administration, but what we really want is that great classroom educator or any other employee in the state in a different style, not the TRS but the ER, employee retirement system. If they're a state employee, we want that person who has put in decades of work to be able to comfortably retire and provide for their family and not live in the lap of luxury in retirement. So again, there are also some models that we've seen from other states that probably need to be thrown into the mix that talk about a tapering of retirement. So up to if you're paid up to $100,000 a year, here's the model. The next 50, then you get a lower and lower percent. And again, not as a punitive measure, but to sort of fulfill the promise of what retirement is. It's not about having a huge salary in retirement. It's about securing a lifestyle. And when you do those steps, you actually free up more resources to take care of, again, your 30-year classroom teacher, right, and you're somebody who's in their first 3 years of classroom education, and make them on a competitive salary scale, so we're not losing these bright young educators to sister and neighbor states right, to start their education career. We're capturing them here,
and that's really where I come back to. And we're going to have guests on next week, Meg Norris, who worked hard on the Senate Bill 384 and worked with Senator Ligon on that, and she's with the United Opt-Out Group. We're going to have her on the program next week and a meet and greet here in the county, because there are a lot of parents that are very concerned with that part of the education system. And I give this scenario. My daughter went to her undergraduate in Alabama, and then she's now at University of Georgia for veterinary school. She's got a friend who graduated from Alabama last May, who's teaching in a school system in Alabama where they do not have the testing. So her tenure is not determined by the Common Core system. Got another one of my daughter's friends who graduated from Kennesaw State, fine school, was immediately hired into Cobb County, And her third grade class, her tenure is determined by the Common Core testing requirements. That she graduated May 20th of last year of Kennesaw State, and they never taught one single semester under the Common Core principle. So how can we expect a young 23-year-old teacher to step out there and their livelihood, and especially that first 3 years, their income, their pay scale, and potential raises or whatever, to be determined under a program that's mandated? And really, there's not enough evidentiary evidence to show me, and I really feel like most parents, that Common Core is good for our students. If anything, it's exactly the opposite. The stress level of the testing and the issues that I'm seeing at just 3 or 4 programs we've done around it, it's a dramatic issue.
Well, there's no doubt that it is, and I come from a family with a lot of public school educators, and one of the bills that I'm most pleased with. I'm not sure anything we do is perfect down there, and it certainly is not. But Senate Bill 364 is one that I know the teachers in your life have probably focused on. It significantly reduces the amount of evaluation that's based on the testing component, the student growth component. It's still there, so we're still evaluating that. It also reduces the number of tests required for our elementary students, which is really important. As a parent of elementary aged students, it's an important thing in our household, because I want my sons who are in school, my daughter will be, to be learning. Right. And to be having that experience with their teachers. And certainly testing is an appropriate part of the educational cycle. I don't really know many people who disagree with that premise, but there is relief coming in the form of Senate Bill 364. Again, I don't think it's perfect. There are things in there that I think need to be addressed, but we're stepping in the right direction and trying to find a balance, which is part of what we do in everything, I guess, at the legislative level. But I'm certainly really pleased that we were able to get that through, got the support of the House. Lindsey Tippins, who's a senator from Marietta, sits next to me in the chamber, and he chairs our Education and Youth Committee. He worked tirelessly on that bill, and I'm not sure Senator Tippins would tell you it's exactly like he wants today, but that's the process that we engage in, and the end result makes, I believe, the classroom experience better for students, which is the most important thing we do in education.
Absolutely.
It also makes the employment setting better for teachers, which is really important. And then for the districts and the systems, it gives them more flexibility to manage and be responsible for their staff, which really is important. If you're going to be asked to be responsible for something, you need control over how it's done and managed.
Right. Yeah, because and you both have your own business as well. We all three of us, I have a business of my own, plus I work for Fortune 500. I know the cost of hiring and training somebody to get up to speed. And when you're having a turnover of 13-14% annually of teachers who are just leaving the system, we really need to have a focus on it. And I hope that, and as I've said, and we'll talk about next week, that parents show up not just at their Board of Education meeting, but they show up at the district Board of Education meetings, because they have a voice there. I think at that level they need to hear more of the concerns. You're nodding, so I know you want to add something to it.
I'm not going to try to mess up what he just said. It was eloquent,
Okay.
And he hit the nail right on the head. But I'll just say, I think the General Assembly that's in Atlanta today understands better what some of the problems are in education, and that is we've got to keep the politicians and the bureaucrats out of the classroom, let the teachers do their job, quit focusing on the testing requirements and the mandated criteria they've been put on under the federal mandates over the years. And I think you're seeing a reform in that direction. And this bill that Charlie just mentioned, 364, that Tippins introduced, was a good bill. It's the first bill that I've heard teachers get excited about in a long time. I have two sister-in-laws that are public school teachers, and one of them teaches my son in the 7th grade, and they are glad we finally get it, and they're talking positive about it, and we look forward to seeing the results of that. But talking about the compensation and all that. We're losing our good teachers because of all the mandates and all the testing requirements. They feel like they're not allowed to teach anymore, that they're there to just follow a book and a set of instructions, and that's not what teachers are built to do, and that's not what they're made to do. My grandmother was a school teacher for 35 or 40 years in a one-room schoolhouse. They started out every day with the Holy Bible, and then they worked all day long, and they did all their criteria, and all their curriculum, and they didn't have a bureaucratic agency in Washington, D.C. telling them how to do it. And
right.
So, we've got to get back to the classroom and put our resources in the classroom and not in all the administrative offices and in Atlanta and Washington. And I think we're moving in the right direction. And the governor has a lot of good ideas. I think next year he's going to talk about education reform and funding. We've got to get something going to keep our money in North Georgia. This 5 mil share and this QBE formula doesn't work. It's a disadvantage for people in North Georgia, and I look forward to the day where we can correct that as well.
Yeah, and us being a Tier 4 county, that's right. It's definitely an issue when I look at Gwinnett and I look at the money that's there. So, and now just on a bit higher level, and this is a pet peeve of mine, and I want to get both of your ideas or where you would stand on this. The Board of Regents and the governor. What do you feel like the legislature, can do to make that a more equitable system? Because as it is, and I went to school to a college in another state, and we got ready to fire a coach. The Board of Regents and the Alumni Association asked us to send money, and we donated money, and we fired that coach. But if I could fire a Board of Regents officer, I'd write the check today. That's just my personal opinion, so in full disclosure. But Charlie?
Well, we have a Board of Regents because they were trying to correct the problem of a legislature that was too involved in the management of the universities and colleges in Georgia. And I think many, and I probably share this opinion, feel like the pendulum may have swung too far in the other direction. I am not one of the people that then says that the solution is to strip them, because I tend to believe I'm not the smartest guy who's ever lived or even living today or anything like that. And I think people who were intelligent created this system, and they were trying to address specific issues or concerns. And so we need to think before we act, as opposed to act and then realize, well, maybe that wasn't the best solution. So I do think there are steps. Obviously, we continue to have the power of the purse. That is, circling back and not to make it's certainly not the solution to the whole problem. Senate Bill 312 that I mentioned, one of the things that bill would do is create a downward pressure, a downward incentive on tuition with respect to those schools that would be qualified for a 312 grant. That's something that is important, I think, to all of us who are watching what cost of higher education is doing. Today at our flagship schools, tuition is accelerating away from us, payers. I mean, people who are going to hopefully be sending children to school one day. And so we have to sort of chase that, and because the regents are able to derive resources really from a lot of other sources other than the state budget and state allocation, I think there's a concern that they're getting removed from the power of the purse in that respect. So I do think that for me, it's more appropriate for us to have sort of an adult, rational discussion about how are some things that we can do to pull back and make more balance without going the route that some would say, oh, we're just going to abolish the Board of Regents. Because, again, they were put there because of a legislature that was too involved. And I don't want myself or my colleagues, as much as I love and respect Steve, I didn't run for school board. I didn't run for Athens Board of Regents representative for University of Georgia, and dividing some of those decisions is I think a good thing. We talk about shared power in our form of government, and that's appropriate. But we need to have a conversation about where that balance falls. And I think that I think that can be done. I think that sometimes it's uncomfortable because it feels personal to people. People feel like, well, you're fighting it because of me, and so it makes it difficult. But that's what we're called on to do. We weren't elected to go make easy decisions. You're supposed to go and have hard conversations. So that's my view on the issue.
I won't add too much more to that, but I'll say this. I live in Dahlonega, as you know, and we have the University of North Georgia there. And so I'll brag on the Board of Regents a little bit. They're going through a lot of change in the last few years. They've been merging and consolidating campuses all over the state. And I can use the University of North Georgia as a good example of how they've saved money and tried to eliminate some overlap and some duplication. So now we have 5 campuses that are part of the UNG network. The main campus is in Dahlonega. You have the Gainesville campus, Oconee County campus, a Cumming campus, and just last year we added the Blue Ridge campus. And so you have 5 different locations under the umbrella of the University of North Georgia, and we're seeing savings by doing that. And they've done that same consolidation in other parts of the state, and they're going to continue to look for ways to create the efficiencies. I think we've been so successful in our university system over the last 30 years since we created the Hope Scholarship that it's driven a lot of people to school and to college that probably never would have afforded to go. And so the cost of education has skyrocketed over the last 2 decades. And we're having to build new campuses. We're having to build new dormitories, new buildings, classrooms. And so the cost of all that has really gone up a lot in the last 10 years alone. So we've got to find a way to keep a balance on it. We don't want the tuition rates to continue to go up, and I think there's some frustration in the General Assembly about that. I've heard House members and senators both talk about how do we put a cap on it, and I think the first thing you have to do is sit down with the executive branch and have a good, healthy discussion on where we are and where are we headed and how do we control the cost so you don't put a burden on working families in Georgia.
Right. Let me slide in and apologize for doubling up on the same question, but Steve's comments made me think about something that I do think is important that gets pointed out. Steve mentioned North Georgia, which is a great school in our system. Dalton State College, of course, is in Dalton, which is in the district I represent, and is also a really great school with a great story. And one of the things that's important to recognize is that students who graduate from Dalton State and its cohort of state colleges around Georgia don't have huge student loan debts. And they are getting good degrees and good education, and they're performing very well when they go on to graduate school, when they go into the workplace. Those that transfer after some period of time, their statistics show that they are getting better GPA than their peer groups that even started at some of the other schools. And so the story I think that we need to be telling as fiscal conservatives is reminding the marketplace that you have a job as well in choosing what's affordable. When you're talking about making a choice between a school that charges less than $2,000 per semester and more than $6,000 per semester, you need to make an actual consumer choice, especially if you're borrowing those resources. That's it. That is there $4,000 or more difference in what you're going to receive. And so I think that, and I actually think the regents have a role to play in that discussion of informing and educating the public about the return on investment aspect of higher education.
Right. And then when you look at it, that's that partnership that I feel like is the disconnect that the Board of Regents has had from the industry, the workforce, Georgia, and that type of thing. When you look at our technical colleges, and for the most part, the very good job that they've done to start tailoring the classes and the courses they're teaching to the workplace. Therefore, that transition from a student from the day they graduate, they're already either interning or there's a job lined up and waiting for them, that at the collegiate level or the university level, we need to focus more on that partnership. And I think that will help because there are plenty of corporations around the country, and I work for one that spends a tremendous amount of money in scholarships every year, and we supply and support the AES program nationwide. But that's where we know our future customers and our future technicians for the automotive industry, and not just automotive anymore, but whether it's energy, whether it's whatever the sector is that we service, that's where our future is. So supporting those programs at an affordable level, I think, is key. One thing I will say for Lieutenant Governor Cagle is had the opportunity to work with him on some of the advanced high schools. Clayton County or Henry County was one of them, and I got our local representative Rick Jaspers to finally go down, got the opportunity to see that high school where a student graduates after 4 years in high school with a year of their technical education already banked and can turn around and graduate from Clayton State.
A great program.
Yeah, and
we have, in Gordon County, there's a college and career academy that partners with Georgia Northwestern, as well as the Whitfield County College and Career Academy. Of course, Chattahoochee Tech. There's a lot of dual enrollment options. The number of stories of young people who are graduating high school with some sort of certificate, some sort of higher ed accomplishment, and able to transition directly into the workforce at a higher wage rate. Those are the stories that we ought to be celebrating and promoting.
Yeah, and we need to work on that same philosophy at the university level. And I've got just an anecdotal story of a young lady who's graduating from University of Alabama. She finished her bachelor's in 3 years. So now this May she finishes her master's with 2 years. That young lady is being courted by Emory, UGA, North Carolina, Seattle, Washington State for her PhD because they know she's going to do research. They're offering her a stipend plus an education. And those are the kind of people we need to pull in. And by doing partnerships with industry, and if we're going to have a research university, let's research, let's find out what the industries that we need to partner with, and that way those students know when they come to Georgia, they can stay in Georgia, they can have a career for the next 30 years when they finish out. And I think overall that's going to bring down the cost because, as we all know, the more research university does, the more money there is in the bucket. So,
well, let's brag about our local schools, our technical college here in Jasper, Chattahoochee Tech.
Yeah.
Now, that is a gem. That is a golden nugget in North Georgia. And we have one of the best, if not the best, technical college system in the country. Yeah. And we have some great success stories that we can talk about. And I tell kids all the time, you don't have to go to college to get a good job. You go to technical college and you can make $40, $50, $60 an hour the day you graduate. They're looking for welders right now to come out of school and go to work the next day. My brother runs a machinist shop over in Cleveland. They operate 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. He literally goes to the technical college in Clarksville and he hires students in their second year and he puts them to work because he knows once they get their degree, they're gone. He won't be able to hire them. So I mean, you can't find a better job than if you get a technical degree in these colleges. And Jasper's blessed to have that. It's a great opportunity for our local people.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate to be involved and be on the advisory board for all three of the Chattahoochee Tech campuses in their automotive and auto body departments for the last 5-6 years. And yeah, when we just had about 100 high school students, first time in a number of years, but one of our Board of Education members, Daniel Bell, who actually teaches at Chattahoochee Tech, actually reached out to the high school and encouraged juniors and seniors to come to campus. And we did a tour and went through the careers and talked about salaries, talked about that take your 2 years at a technical school, get you a job.
Absolutely.
When you find what you really want to do, you've got your credit hours. You want to go to Georgia Tech, become an automotive engineer, you're already on the path.
Well, and it's close to home and it's very affordable.
Yeah.
And it's a great opportunity for local people.
Absolutely. All right. Look, another question, something came up in the session. I know it was a disappointment to a lot of people, but it was a good thing to other people, was the RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Bill. And I've said this in one of the other shows, my personal opinion, I don't have any problem with the governor if he decides to veto it because it was a bad bill, but not because of who he might be vetoing it for. I just don't believe when you offer somebody tax abatements to come to this state to make movies and films, they're not going to pack up and leave because they don't like one bill or one piece of legislation. But that's my opinion. But where do you think we'll be on on this next session? Because I've already heard the January 1 is going to be another hot topic. So.
Well, I'll start by answering your question and saying I hope we're not back here. I hope we're not back with the scenario that we ultimately ended the session and then with the governor's veto. I, of course, am disappointed by the veto. I disagree with the governor's decision, but I respect the governor, and I respect that he has a role to play in the process. My biggest frustration in this entire discussion around religious liberty is that the story became the lie. The legislation itself does not form a basis for discrimination. Legislation, House Bill 757, which was sort of the final piece that ultimately received passage and went to the governor's desk, is not about discrimination. It's really designed to protect individuals in their sincerely held religious beliefs. And so it protects individuals and it protects religious-based institutions. I don't really know any Americans who don't espouse those principles, and if so, they're in an extraordinary minority. And on the piece that's commonly called the RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration part, the overwhelming majority of states have the standard. The federal government has the standard, and people, like I say, the lie. People say, well, you already have the First Amendment. Well, of course you do. The question that RFRA answers is, what test do you use when the First Amendment case comes up? It's not what protections do you have, it's what test does the court employ to determine what standard. And for all of your other First Amendment rights, your freedom of speech, your freedom of press, you get strict scrutiny. Right. If you're in a litigation with the federal government, you get strict scrutiny. If you're in litigation with 31 other states, you get strict scrutiny. And so all of these businesses, all of these individuals, all these organizations are living with that test when it comes to free exercise, really across the country. And so the story became about this mythical idea that it was about discrimination, even though the people who were making that claim can point to a total of 0 cases nationwide where a RFRA standard has ever been used to justify or protect somebody discriminating on the basis of gender or sexual orientation or those sorts of things. So as somebody who cares about the truth as well as religious freedom and liberty, that was the most frustrating part, is that repeatedly saying, explain how this authorizes or protects discrimination, and you're speaking to a void. There's no answer. There's no response to that, and getting back sort of silence. But yet that continued to be what was repeated about it. And moreover, I think that we are a tolerant people in a tolerant state. I don't think that Georgians who want to express and honor their own religious beliefs, whatever they may be, are out to try and get people or discriminate against people. I don't really think that's in our character as a people. There's obviously bad eggs in every lot, but I don't think that's who we are. So that was a real frustration. I will expect, and I don't want to speak for Steve, but I expect he'll say the same. This issue will be back. When the General Assembly convenes in January, the issue will be back. My hope and prayer is that discussion will be advanced by the time we convene, not when we convene, but that by the time we convene, the governor will have been to the table. And frankly, some of these groups that have this notion that it's a terrible, awful thing will also have been engaged and challenged to say, tell us what it is you're so afraid of with a bill that says, no clergy member has to do anything that violates their belief. No church or religious organization can be compelled. And if you go to court to assert your own free exercise rights, the government has to meet the highest standard before they can burden your free exercise rights. Tell us what's scary about that. That sounds very American. That sounds very consistent with our first principles of freedom as a country. So I hope that those discussions will have taken place before. One of the things that didn't get a whole lot of attention in the debate and the discussion around the bill was that one thing that was very clear, and it came in every Senate version that passed and in the final version that passed, that said if someone has entered into a contract to deliver some sort of service for the government, that's a whole another discussion.
Yeah, because that is a legal commitment.
That's right. You are obligated to fulfill it. So all of this notion that people are going to somehow choose what services they deliver if they're on some government grants, that's not what the legislation ever said.
Right.
Like I say, I hope we're not back here. I hope we have legislation in place that gives reasonable and appropriate protection to all Georgians of faith, whatever that faith may be, and with respect to their interactions with government, and that is represented and presented in a way that the truth is the real debate and the real discussion.
Right. Right.
Man, I'd hate to be running against Charlie Bethel. He understands this issue and all the other ones great, so I'm not going to get into that, but I can tell you this. We lost the battle in messaging when the liberal media took over, and they hammered us every day in and day out, talking about the discrimination that this would allow and so forth and so on. It's just simply not true. Now, between now and January 1st, Charlie just said it, we expect the leadership in the House and the Senate to get together with the governor's office, work through all of these issues, and hammer out a new piece of legislation I predict will be one of the first bills that will get introduced come January of 2017. It will be a major priority for the Senate Republican caucus, and I'm sure it will be for the House caucus as well. So I feel like we'll pass another bill next year, and I think the governor will sign it. If we all work together, we'll come through next year victorious. So I look forward to that opportunity.
Great. Well, and again, from my standpoint, Governor, if you're going to veto it on merits of the bill. Don't veto it because somebody threatens you.
Well, and let me just say this. The film industry, we love them being here. They're here because of our tax credits. They're right. Here because of the environment, the business environment we have. Georgia's the third largest state for the film industry, and we're proud of that. We want to keep those jobs here, but we're not going to sell out on our values in order to do so.
Absolutely. All right. Well, both of you have challengers to your positions. In closing, what would you say to your voters that would make them want to send you back to the Gold Dome?
Well, first, it's an honor to represent the 51st District. I live in Dahlonega, but I represent all a part of 8 counties. That's North Forsyth, Dawson, Lumpkin, White, Union, Fannin, Gilmer, and Pickens. Now, Senator Bethel and I share Pickens County, but we represent all of the people in Pickens County. It doesn't matter if it's on the west side or the east side of 515. If there's a problem in Pickens County, we're here. As soon as John Weaver, the mayor, calls us, or if Rob Jones comes in and needs us for something, we're here. We work with our state rep over here, Rick Jaspers, every day. We're friends, and over the last 6 years, we've developed a relationship with our local governments and our school systems here. They know if they need something, they can pick up the phone and call us. Now, it takes a while to get up to speed on some of these issues, and I think over the last 6 years, both Charlie and I have learned a great deal by working in the Senate, but also working with your local people here back home. So I would ask people to look at what we've done, look at our voting record. We're very conservative. We're ranked one of the top conservative states in the country, but the two of us are also ranked 2 of the most conservative senators in the state Senate. So we can vote on we can run on our record. We don't talk the talk. We actually walk the walk. And I would encourage everybody to look at our voting record and give us a call if there's anything we can do to help. But I would ask everybody to vote for us on May the 24th of this year. Thank you for having us.
All right. Joe?
Well, Steve said so earlier, so I'll say that I'm not sure I could run against Steve on that. And Steve does a great job, and I'm privileged to be his friend, but also to be his colleague working in the Senate. I would say that without repeating, I would say the sorts of things that Steve said. I would also say that, I was raised in the 54th Senate District, and that's all of Murray and Whitfield counties, and it's portions of Gordon and Pickens. It's basically the area between Calhoun and Jasper, if you look at it on a map. And this is my home. I love it. I love the people here. I've worked in the manufacturing floor covering industry for over a decade, educated in the public school system in this area. And this is where my heart is, and the people around this part of the state are the sort of people that I have a heart for. And I believe that we are a conservative place. I don't think it would be a surprise to anybody that we were ranked a conservative state and that Steve and I are ranked on the conservative end of the spectrum, because those are the people we represent, and that's what you would expect. I think that what I hope to do is continue working on the things that I've been working on and make a difference for not just our district but for our state, and continue to move move the ball forward on conservative issues, but also on solutions for small businesses, on solutions in our criminal justice sector. I mean, I carried the juvenile justice reform bill in the Senate, and when we talk about being smarter about how we deal with young people and adults in the criminal justice system, the return on investment as a taxpayer is enormous, and we're already seeing that return now. But beyond that, the return on investment in lives, and when I'm starting to encounter people, and sometimes I'll go visit courts and those sorts of things, and in other settings we'll meet young people who are not going to YDC, going to alternative or treatments. And when you encounter people whose lives are changed for the better, and you think about what that means as far as a return on investment, that person becomes a contributor and a producer over the course of their life. That's exciting. Those are the sorts of things that when Steve and I both have young children, and when we're in the session, we miss time with our families, and that's a sacrifice we choose and we willingly make. When you come home on those days, you feel really good about explaining to your children, what did I do today? What did Daddy do today that meant you missed something with me and with us? And so those are the things that I get excited about. I think Georgia's future is bright. And I want to be a part of making it stay that way and get brighter. And so that's why I want to run for the Senate, and that's when I want to go back. And so that's why I'd asked for a vote on May 24th. And, of course, early voting starts on May the 2nd, which is coming up soon, and encourage people to take advantage of the early voting opportunities in all of our counties.
Absolutely. All right. Well, again, thank both you gentlemen for being on with me, and good fortunes in your campaign cycle. And, I'd like to have you back on and before the election. And you're always – I know you both come to Pickens County, and I tell you at your level of responsibility, that means a lot to the people here in Pickens County.
It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all. And we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with our next guest, Dr. Paul Broun, on his Fed Up tour here in North Georgia. So be back in a few minutes. All right, and good afternoon, and welcome back to our second part of the Patriotic Dragon radio program, coming to you from Rocco's Pub and Grill. Patriotic Dragon is heard on WYYZ 1490 AM, your hometown radio program here in Jasper, Georgia. As always, the opinions, comments are those of the guest, not necessarily those of WYYZ, Patriotic Dragon Radio, the Pickens County GOP, or our sponsor. Our sponsor this month is Clear Car Concepts, providing clear protection for your vehicle from road debris and wear and tear of the Atlanta roads. Find them at your Atlanta area new car dealers or at Clear Car Concepts. We're pleased to have on with us this week Dr. Paul Broun, running for the 9th Congressional seat, currently held by Doug Collins. Dr. Broun, thank you for being on with us.
Well, it's great being here. I appreciate being here in Pickens County. I come over here to go buy hunting supplies over here at the barn. So I know Pickens County real
everybody knows
well.
what the bargain barn is.
That's right. The bargain barn, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. We had it figured out long before Cabela's and Bass Pro Shop.
Oh, that's right. They do. In fact, it was hunting and Second Amendment issues that got me involved in politics to begin with. I was the government affairs vice president for Safari Club International, which is the world's largest pro-hunting, pro-gun conservation organization. My job was to go to Washington and make sure that we kept our Second Amendment rights and hunting rights, and I did that for a number of years. And then I thought, when I was supposed to be the president of this huge international organization, that I could serve hunters and fight for our liberty better, being as a member of Congress. It took me a couple of times trying before I finally got there in 2007, but I'm an ardent, very ardent defender of the Second Amendment. In fact, I was the chairman of the Second Amendment Task Force in the U.S. House for 4 terms when I was there fighting for our Second Amendment rights. So that's the reason I know about places like Jasper, Georgia, and the bargain barn, because that's how important it is to me.
Well, and if you would, just to let's start with a little bit more background for the listeners. Before you got into politics and that type of thing, what your background is. I know you're from the Athens-Clarke County area.
Well, I grew up there. I lived in southwest Georgia. I'm a medical doctor. I'm a family practitioner, a general practitioner, a family doctor, and I've practiced medicine most all of my life. In fact, the first political office I ever held was being elected to Congress in 2007. I served 4 terms. in the U.S. House, fighting for liberty and freedom, fighting against the establishment is a good example. I fought to try to prevent John Boehner from being Speaker in the last Congress. There were 12 of us that voted for somebody else, not John Boehner. Our current congressman voted for him twice. In fact, when he came to Washington in 2013, in January 2013, he hooked his little red wagon to John Boehner and has been an establishment, a big government Republican ever since. And the best proof of that is that John Boehner put him on the Rules Committee. No one, absolutely no one, goes on the Rules Committee unless the Speaker can control them completely. And so I fought against Boehner. I voted for Allen West to be the Speaker, as a matter of fact. I wanted somebody to get in Barack Obama's face and say, Mr. President, we ain't going to do that. We're going to support the people of this country. We're going to support the Constitution, as our founding fathers meant it, which means limited government, instead of John Boehner, who just has pandered to the president. He's been a deal maker and has given up our rights and our liberties in the process. The greatest example of how the establishment and how John Boehner, now Paul Ryan, and Doug Collins have betrayed the American people, betrayed the people of their district, betrayed the people of Georgia, is this omnibus bill that Doug Collins voted on back in December of 2015. Nancy Pelosi gleefully said of Doug Collins and all the Republicans that voted for that bill, they really gave away the store, quote and unquote. And they did. They gave away our store, and it's got to stop, Will.
All right. Well, and you know, that's we have a saying in the military when you're, I don't know, I was a lieutenant, when you posturing is not a position. And politicians who send me newsletters on a daily basis, I have a problem reading them. I usually, if I wanted to waste the paper, I'd print them off if I had a bird cage.
Well, thank you for your service, sir. I'm a Marine. I was a jet engine mechanic in the Marine Reserves in the mid-'60s, and then when I was accepted to medical school, the Medical College of Georgia had me get out of active Marine Reserves. So I got a commission in the Navy, and I was in the Navy Reserves through medical school, and I didn't get a chance to go to Vietnam because I was in med school and in my medical training. And then I went back to practicing medicine after I got out of the reserve. I was there for I was in the reserves for 11 years and 3 months and some odd days. But then when we started into the Gulf War, or actually before, when we developed Desert Shield, I started trying to get back in the military and actually was recommissioned back in the Navy Reserve as a general medical officer in 2010 because I am a Marine. And Marines want to go whenever we're involved in a conflict, and I did too. I was actually deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. So I'm an Afghanistan war vet. I was over there taking care of sick and injured Marines and soldiers, and I have a tremendous respect for those who put on the cloth of this nation, but I also have a tremendous respect for their families, because spouses and kids serve just like our service members do. And the federal government has broken promises that it's made to veterans. In fact, just yesterday, I was down at the VA hospital in Decatur just talking to veterans about how we could help the veterans better. And our current congressman has basically betrayed the veterans, too. He's done precious little, if anything, to help solve the veterans' problems. And as a doctor, I know how difficult it is. As a congressman, I saw the people that we help to try to get veterans benefits. And Doug Collins hasn't done that, but I will. I'll be the veterans' best friend once I get to Congress. So when people vote for me, and I invite all the listeners to come on our website, paulbroun.com. It's PAULBROUN.com, and join the Fed Up Express, because I'm fed up with what's going on in Washington. I'm fed up with the Republican leadership in Washington. I'm fed up with the betrayals of Doug Collins and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell and John Boehner. We've got to take this country back for constitutional and limited government and restore the foundational principles of this nation, and that's what I'm all about.
Okay, all right. Well, you know, here in Georgia, obviously, the last session, which was something that got passed through both houses through a lot of wrangling back and forth, was our religious freedom restoration.
Absolutely.
And then vetoed by the governor. I didn't have any problem with the governor vetoing it if it was bad legislation, but I had a problem with him vetoing it because of pressure from outside of Georgia. Where do you stand on the religious freedom?
I was very disappointed that the governor vetoed the bill. He's a good friend, and I was I was disappointed that he did. You see, religious freedom is one of our First Amendment rights, and we've got to protect the right for people to exercise, to have a free exercise of religion, and that's what the First Amendment says. In fact, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are the guardians of liberty. We must not lose those God-given, constitutionally protected rights. And we've seen judges attack our religious freedom. We've seen Republicans and Democrats from Washington attack our religious freedom, and it's got to stop. The American people need to stand up to this out-of-control government, particularly that's going on in Washington, and say, no, we're not going to put up with this anymore. And that's why I call my campaign the Fed Up Express, because I am fed up with Republicans and Democrats alike. I'm fed up with Doug Collins and his pandering to the Republican establishment and representing the special interest in Washington, the big business, and not representing the people of this district. And that's the reason that I hope and pray that the people of the 9th Congressional District will look past the fact that he's a nice guy. But we've got to stop voting for people because they're nice guys. We've got to stop voting for people on personality. We have to vote on principle and policy. His policy is establishment. His policy is big government. His policy is creating more debt. His policy is funding Planned Parenthood, funding Obamacare, funding all those bad things that we in the omnibus bill. And I never voted for an omnibus bill. I call them the ominous omnibus bills. My wife calls it the omnibus bill because it is going to bust the federal budget. It did already, and it's going to bust our budgets as well through higher spending. And it just has to stop. And that's what I'm all about, is trying to stop this out-of-control government that Republicans and Democrats alike have built.
And along that same line, because I know that you and the governor are personal friends and have been, what price do you think the governor will pay politically for his veto?
Well, he's not running for re-election again unless he runs for the U.S. Senate if that position comes up. So I don't know. We'll see. I applaud what some of the members of the General Assembly have said when Casey Cagle, the Lieutenant Governor, as well as what David Ralston has said, that they're not going to try to override the governor's veto. We've got to pass a Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and I hope the governor will see fit next time to sign it into law. You see, the most powerful political force in America is embodied in the first three words of the U.S. Constitution, we the people. And we the people need to rise up and say no more to big government, no more to John Boehner and Paul Ryan and the terrible policies of Barack Obama that they have supported, Mitch McConnell as well. And we have to say to the members of the General Assembly, our U.S. senators, our U.S. congressmen, our state senators, our state House reps, to the governor, to the president, this is the kind of government that we want. We've got to go back to constitutionally limited government as our founding fathers meant it, and that's what I'm fighting for.
Okay, all right. In the race that you're involved in, there's so many challengers running for that primary position. What would you say to the voters that would make them want to send you to D.C. to be there to represent Georgia?
Well, I have a proven, consistent, constitutional, conservative voting record. They don't. Doug Collins, when he ran in 2012 in the open race in the 9th Congressional District, he promised the people of this district that he would vote according to the original intent of the Constitution. He never has since he's been there. He never has done that. We have other people who are running in this district as challengers who say they will do the same thing that Doug Collins did. But how do we know how they will vote? I've seen congressmen, freshman congressmen, over and over again come to Washington having pledged that they would not vote for John Boehner, as an example. that they would not vote for Planned Parenthood. In fact, Doug Collins promised the people of the 9th District he would not vote to fund Planned Parenthood. But he did in that omnibus bill. And now he's denying that there's funding for Planned Parenthood. Franklin Graham resigned as a very publicly resigned from the Republican Party because that omnibus bill funds Planned Parenthood. Heritage Action, Family Research Council. People can go on the website, go on Google, if they'll put Omnibus 2015 Planned Parenthood and look at all of the different posts there, the different websites there, they'll see how much that bill did indeed fund Planned Parenthood. And if they had put one sentence in the bill, one limitation sentence in the bill, it would have stopped not only the discretionary funds that come through Title X that go to Planned Parenthood, which is in the bill, but it would have stopped even the non-discretionary funds that's going to Planned Parenthood through Medicaid, which is where they get most of their funding. If they had put one sentence that said this, if it said, no federal funds will be expended to Planned Parenthood or any of its affiliates, period, it would have stopped all funding to Planned Parenthood. Doug Collins promised he would not fund for Planned Parenthood, but he did. So, in fact, when he voted no on the continuing resolution in September, he put out an email, sent out letters to people all across the district saying he would not vote for Planned Parenthood and that there was funding for Planned Parenthood in the continuing resolution in September. Nothing changed from September to December.
Yeah.
And he funded Planned Parenthood, and he denies now that there's any funding there. And his henchman, Bill Coakley, goes around trying to convince people he didn't. So, anyway.
Yeah, like I said, posturing is not a position.
That's right.
So,
and it's not a principle either.
No.
I'm a principle. I'm the people's principle conservative constitutionalist, and that's the reason that people need to join me in my Fed Up Express campaign to replace Doug Collins, an establishment guy, with the People's Congressman Paul Broun. And they go on our website, paulbroun.com. They can volunteer. They can contribute. paulbroun.com, PAULBROUN, paulbroun.com. My family can't spell or can't pronounce. We spell Brown with a U instead of a W. But it's paulbroun.com. They can contribute. They can volunteer. Come join our Fed Up Express to stop this out-of-control government that Doug Collins, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, and John Boehner have built.
All right. And I do want to, in full disclosure, of course, comments came out today on the internet, and as well as posts from Senator Collins,
he's not a senator.
Yeah, Mr. Collins' office through his campaign manager about comments on your older chief of staff, David Bowser's indictment. I want to give you an opportunity to speak to that, because I know it's going to be in the news cycle for the rest of this week. And,
well, this has vindicated what I've been saying all along. An anonymous complaint was filed against my office that was not factual. The complaint was that I had used official funds to pay for a campaign consultant, which did not happen. I cooperated with the federal investigators at great length, in fact, even waiving some of my legal protections, because I knew that I had not done anything except for follow the rules of the House. I did everything I could to help the federal investigators to find the truth, and an indictment came out. But no charges were ever filed against me. No indictment was ever requested by the federal investigators. So there was no vote by the federal grand jury that was looking into this down in Macon, and the federal grand jury went home at the end of February. And as far as I'm concerned, that vindicates what I've been saying all along, that I did nothing wrong. Now, and I want to do the truth. If my staff, any of my staff, did something wrong, then I wanted to know it just as well as the American people should know it. What is Doug Collins knows that he's trying to make me guilty by association is what he's trying to do, but I'm not guilty. There are no charges filed, no indictment asked for, no indictment handed out, and the federal grand jury has gone home. And what this does is that if indeed my chief of staff did something wrong, then he needs to pay the penalty for it. And evidently, the grand jury thought there was enough against him to indict him, and we'll see what happens. I believe in law and order. I believe in the rule of law, and no one, absolutely no one, from the President of the United States down to the people here in Pickens County should be above the law.
Our local tax commissioner.
Well, our local county commission chair.
No one can say that.
No one, and certainly not me, should be above the law. But the thing is, Doug Collins is trying to make a big deal out of something because he cannot stand on his voting record. He's trying to get people to focus on other than how poorly he's voted for the people of this district. And they need to realize that this is just a diversion tactic of Doug Collins, as well as the press, as well as the establishment in Washington, D.C., as well as the establishment in Atlanta, Georgia. They don't want me coming back to Washington because they know that I've been a thorn in the side of the Republican establishment because I have been fighting for the people. I've been fighting to leave dollars in people's pockets. I've been fighting to get the regulatory burden and tax burden off of small businesses. I've been fighting for your local county commission and your local city council so that they can take care of the needs of the people here in Pickens County without having all these federal mandates. We need to leave dollars here in Pickens County instead of sending them to Washington, D.C. That's what I've been fighting for. But Doug Collins doesn't want that message to go out because he's fighting for the establishment in Washington. He's fighting for the special interest. He's fighting to and has voted to put in place all of the bad policies of Barack Obama. And the leadership in the House as well as the Senate have gone along with Barack Obama and have not even given a whimper of a fight in that omnibus bill. It's got to stop. And so Doug Collins is trying to divert people's attention away from his voting record and trying to make a big deal over something that is no big deal as far as I'm concerned. I've been vindicated, and I've worked with the federal investigators. In fact, they knocked on my door and said, "Can we look at your emails?" I said, "I'll give you a better choice. Why don't you take my computer?" And I unhooked it. They kept it for 3 days. It hadn't worked right ever since it came back.
Well,
I did everything I could to help.
Those are the same people who set up Obamacare, so that might explain.
Well, the thing is, I wanted to know the truth because I know what the truth is, and I knew that I have followed the ethics rules of the House. I followed all the rules that are out there, and that Doug Collins is trying to make me guilty of something that I didn't do, and he's trying to divert attention away from himself.
Well, and from my comment, this is me personally to Doug and his chief of staff to try and paint somebody and go after them with a broad brush to be guilty by association versus whatever David Bowser did. I'm sure he'll pay the penalty if he's guilty of it. And he's also not working in Georgia anymore. He's somewhere else, which is a separate situation there and stuff. And so we hope the best for him, and I'm sure he'll deal with it. But
my prayers are for him and his family. But if he's guilty of breaking the law, he ought to go to jail. Right. And I want to know about it. And that's the reason I cooperated with the federal investigators completely for 2 years now to get to the truth, because I know what the truth is. I know that I did not do anything that was outside the bounds of the ethics of the House, and I stayed within those ethical bounds. I stayed within legal bounds, and what has happened is vindicates me in that regard, because no charges were filed against me. No indictment was requested by the federal investigators. In fact, I've been told, it's been my understanding all along that I wasn't even the subject of their investigation, that some of my staff were, and so I've cooperated with them fully to find the truth, which is what the American people deserve. All right.
Well, and Dr. Brown, I want to thank you for being on with us, and best of fortunes in the upcoming election cycle.
Well, please vote for me. I don't. Do you live in the 9th Congressional
I live in the 9th.
Well, please vote for me.
I'll be at the 9th District Convention.
And good. And well, I'll see you up there in Dillard, Georgia,
Yep.
at the convention. But I'd appreciate your vote. I appreciate all our listeners' votes. And please go on our website, paulbroun.com. Check me out. And if people want to know the truth about all these false claims of Doug Collins, and he's been running some personal attack ads, I invite people to call me on my personal cell phone, which is 678-725-9234. That's 678-725-9234. And that's my personal cell phone. I invite our listeners and I invite the county commission chair, who's just come and sit down here a minute ago, to call me about any issue. And I invite the people of this district to call me and talk about how we can solve these problems in Washington, D.C. We've got to take this country back. I'm a Marine fighting for liberty and freedom, fighting for the people of this district, this state, and this nation, which separates me from Doug Collins, because he's fighting for the establishment in Washington, D.C. In fact, the term Washington, D.C. stands for Washington Doug Collins, because they're all combined.
All right. Well, we'll close up the show with that.
PaulBroun.com, PaulBroun.com. Contribute, volunteer, come help us take America back.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Thank you so much, Will.
All right, Rob Jones, you slid in here on me. That's
come sneaking in. I see all your individuals coming in here and having. I would like to welcome Paul Broun here to this radio show that you've got on today, and thank you for being in Pickens County. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, Chairman Jones, I'm glad to be here. It's glad to meet some more people here in Pickens County, and it's a far piece from Gainesville, Georgia, to Pickens County, but you're going to see me here a lot. When I'm the U.S. Congressman, I will represent the people of every single county of this district, and I don't pay any attention to district lines. I'll represent the whole county. I'll represent the whole state. Remember, every member of Congress votes on every single bill that affects every single American.
That's correct.
And so what I do in Congress not only affects all of Pickens County, but it affects the whole nation. So I'm going to be here for you. I'll be here for your commission. I'll be here for the councils. I'll be here to try to bring jobs and industry to Georgia, as I've done. I started the process that brought Caterpillar to Georgia.
Oh.
I started the process that brought Baxter Pharmaceutical to Georgia as well. So, and I'll continue to try to bring jobs and industry here and get the government off the back of you and your commissioners, to get off the back of the city council and get off the back of business and industry, so we can have a prosperous Pickens County. So I pledge to you, I'll be here for you for any issue, not just the 9th District, but Pickens County in particular.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today.
all right. I want to run through just some quick announcements just to close out the show. Please be aware of our 2016 Pickens High School Scholarship with the GOP sponsored. See Miss Whitfield in the counselor's office for details on this GOP sponsor scholarship. Our next show, Thursday, April 14th, will be with our special guest, Meg Norris of the United Opt-Out Group, as well as Catherine White, running for Pickens County Board of Education Post 1, to discuss state testing and how parents can opt out. Thursday, April 21st, will be the Pickens County GOP opposed candidate debate at Chattahoochee Tech at 7 p.m. We'll be recording live that night and have it on for your Saturday at noon show. If you can't join us, please go to the Pickens County GOP website, where you can actually submit questions that you'd like to have asked of those candidates. And then April 28th on Thursday, the show will have John Williamson, who's running for the office in the 51st District in Georgia, with a meet and greet with John to follow the show. So come out, and we're very excited to also be announcing the Dodgeball for Special Olympics, May 14th at the Community Center. You can go to the GOP website for the team forms and sign up for a great cause. And just a reminder, May 24th is Election Day, so get out, campaign, and vote for your choice in Pickens County. Thanks again to our sponsor, Clear Car Concepts. Talk to y'all next week.